It is that time of year again where we do this video for the second time. This is only the second time I have done a video of this kind where I talk about the 10 greatest discoveries I had in 2021 with music. It is only albums that I heard in 2021 that came from previous years that I have discovered. So nothing from this year, because obviously that would make a 2021 year-end list. This video went down really well last year, and I thought, why not carry it on again and make this into a tradition? And like I said last year, still didn't really see many people doing this type of video. So I thought, well, yeah, gotta capitalize on this and make this a thing. I mean, you know, David Rowe out here copying me. I see you, you little shithead. But no, it's all cool. If anyone else is wanting to carry on a series like this, I'm happy to take credit, my boys, because it was me who started it. So like I say, 10 albums that I have discovered from this year that are absolutely worth your time, my time. They are great albums. Some of them are even absolutely exceptionally excelente. So it has to be made into a video. So I'm going to start with Nubya Garcia, the most recent album on this list, because this actually only came out last year, and if I discovered it last year it would have been on the 2020 year-end list, but sadly I did not discover it until this year. It feels like she was robbed a little bit, not only of being on my list but being robbed of the Mercury Prize. She certainly deserved it over the winner and some of the other nominations. I was massively rooting for this when I realized how good it was, and that when I realized that she could actually be a strong contender for winning one of the most spiritual and electrifying jazz albums I've heard in quite some time. This would be Jazz Album of the Year in any given year. It is that good. She's absolutely spellbinding. She creates some really cool dub instrumentals at points too. There's a nice little mishmash of those elements coming together, and wow, she is a massive talent. This is one not to be missed in the jazz world. I want to mention a bit of a rare find for streaming services next, because a lot of city pop doesn't end up making it onto streaming services, as far as I'm aware, as far as my experience seems to tell me so far. A lot of older Japanese music particularly just seems to be difficult to make it onto streaming, but Anri's Timely is one of the most fun and bright pop albums of the 80s. Not even just city pop, this is definitely one of the best pop experiences I think that I've had from 80s music. It is just incredibly well produced. The instrumentals are really sweet and infectious. It's such a joy to listen to front to back. Anyone that is a fan of the song Plastic Love, and if that's the only exposure you've had to J-pop, city pop from that time, play this album please, it's great. Next, I want to mention Pastor T.L. Barrett, who is a soul, gospel, funk artist, who is not an artist that gets much of a shine and totally deserves it. If it's helpful for your sort of perspective, your knowledge on this album, this is where the Father Stretch My Hands sample came from, by the way. It's this album. So Kanye fanboys and fangirls and nerds out there should be wanting to check this album out, and for a really fantastic experience in the soul world, regardless of the sample that this album is famous for. It's a great listen. Next, I want to mention Congo Natty's Jungle Revolution, and I emphasize the word jungle here because this is one of the most jungly albums I've heard in quite some time. This is ridiculously hard. This album goes hard in the fucking paint. It bumps in the fucking whip. Oh my god, this album goes friggin' hard. The dub, the ragga, the reggae, all combined into one of the most earth-shattering albums I've heard this year, and that includes all the albums that came out this year. This is insanely hard. The drum and bass textures are just... it blows your face off. Congo Natty, I believe is the name of the vocalist across all these tracks, is just such a presence on the microphone. Seriously, this album goes hard. I am telling you right now. Next, I want to mention a discovery I found through Goldfish, Caught in the Loop, a 2006 album. I guess you could label it a bit of like a new jazz kind of thing. It definitely has its house influence, but obviously that electronic fusion with the jazz world is really potent throughout, and it just creates this really cool, vibey listening experience. The songs are just so chill, they're so laid back, but they're also really well crafted, they're catchy, they develop nicely as well. Just a really great album in this genre, a hugely undiscovered gem in its own kind, to be honest. It's a great listen. The complete opposite of that, though, is an album I have to discuss, in that it is one of the most famous artists of all time, or he is part of one of the most famous bands of all time. Solo, his work is very popular, but obviously not as popular as the work he did with the Beatles. And this, my friends, is one of the best albums I've heard this year. It was the first time I'd ever heard it as well, and it's George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. This is an epic 90-odd minute album that justifies its runtime, to be honest. The songs are just so heartwarming. They offer so much in the vocals, in the instrumentals. They're produced so wonderfully. It's a really beautiful listen. Tracks like My Sweet Love are just absolutely stunning. Isn't It a Pity is another fantastic cut from this album. This goes head to head with any Beatles album. I'm going to say it right now. This, for me, goes head to head with any Beatles album. I would even dare say this might be my favourite ever album involving a Beatle, including all the Beatles, to be honest. Not to say that I'm downplaying the Beatles' work, I'm not, but I just think this album is just that good. This album hits the spot for me. And I like as well how it ends with those last few tracks where it's just a really random jamming session. They're so randomly out of place, but I just dig the sessions that he's giving us there. It just sounds like he's having a great time with the instrumentals. So yeah, a bit of a weird one, because this is incredibly famous, and yet it's the first time I've heard it this year. This is my first exposure to this album, so that's a pretty weird one, but I discovered it in 2021, it counts. An artist I've been warming up to as the years have gone by. Last year I included Adrian Lenker's solo work on this very video for 2020, but for 2021 I went back and check through Big Thief's earlier stuff, Masterpiece being one of them. A great album. This is potentially the best Big Thief album. I think Real Love, Vegas, particularly Interstate are their best tracks. I think Interstate is absolutely stellar, and it's just incredibly consistent from start to finish. I mean, we'll see how that new album turns out next year. I think it's a double album too, by the way. So, oh my god, I'm excited for that. Very early 2022 we're getting that album, but up until then I think I'd be pretty happy to say that this Masterpiece, dare I say, is a masterpiece. No, I don't want to do that. It is probably their best album, and only discovered it this year. Clark's Turning Dragon next. I think this is an absolutely glitchy IDM experience. I don't really like using the term IDM, but I think sometimes it does make sense, and I think in context with what Clark is doing on this album, with the acidy techno rhythms, the bleepy bloops, this kind of does make sense for being thrown in that umbrella term. But again, it kind of just goes friggin' hard. I mean, Jesus Christ, some of these tracks, man, are just ridiculously detailed and crunchy, and just have so much going for them. Like, if you are a fan of artists like Venetian Snares, for example, really could be a big one for you, this album here. And I've checked out many Clark albums, and to be honest, I think this stands up as being his best work. For Wolves Crew is incredibly addictive and mesmerizing. Just the sound design across this whole thing is really, really awe-inspiring. I think Clark absolutely killed it on this album. And yeah, if you want to go back to some 2000s electronic extravagant releases, go check this out. I don't know why I say extravagant releases. I don't know where that came from, but yeah, you just go for it. My first Chemistry set from Boldy James, I think is his best album to date. I think it's pretty telling actually that this is like his debut, and yet I would say it goes above some of his most recent stuff. But I actually just found the production matching his intense delivery across this album to be really, really exceptional. I just enjoyed his flows quite a lot. He's giving us a bit more of a grittiness that I think not his newest stuff is missing, but I think he just delivered his bars in a way that sold what he was saying a bit better on this album here, and I just think it's the best work Boldy has ever put out, to be honest. I think gangster rap heads would definitely be wanting to check this one out, especially if you've never listened to anything Boldy's put out yet. I think starting with this would be a good shout, actually. But if you are a Boldy fan and you just never have gotten around to this, then please go check it out, because I think it's really, really underrated. And finally, I believe I'm at my 10th album now. We've got through this video so quickly, it feels like there's so much music to continue to talk about, but I wanted to limit it at 10. And my 10th album is perhaps the best one I've heard this year, actually. Either this or George Harrison. One of the two, I would say, but it has to be Sunship. Is This Real? Late 90s release here. We've got a really great combination of two-step and garage. It is one of the, you know, pioneers of the genre. And sometimes, you know, when we have pioneers of particular styles of music, things that come after it sometimes can end up being better than the original. It's not to discredit the pioneer, but sometimes it just ends up being the case. But this is an example for me where this isn't the case, and one of the most influential albums of its kind ends up being absolutely deserving of being one of the best albums. You know, I just look at artists like Disclosure and think they must have took some of their ideas from this album, with the repetition of the vocal samples and the vocals being so hyped up. The tracks are just full of fun. They are so full of life. They are so vibrant and lively. Oh man, they're just so good. And playing this from front to back just puts a massive smile on my face. I just think it's such a great listen. An absolutely stellar release. And an album that I just think will never get boring, never get stale, never get old. And yeah, just a really fantastic, of its kind album here. One of the best I think I've ever heard in the garage genre, the two-step genre. And it's a good starting point as well, especially if you're not from the UK, because this was definitely more of a UK trend and has been for many years. So if you're outside of the UK and you want to kind of get to grips with some, you know, very specific to the culture of UK music, I would certainly say start here, because you are not going to be disappointed. And that's it from me. That is all the 10 albums I've discovered this year in 2021 from the year of any other year that isn't 2021. Sensational stuff here. Hopefully you get some recommendations out of this video. There's got to be something you're gonna love. I need you to check these out. All kinds of genres being thrown into this blender here, so there's got to be at least one thing you take from this video. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully there's something for everyone here. Let me know your best discoveries from 2021, and hopefully you can recommend me some stuff as well, and I end up listening to it and thinking it's great, because like I say, I think all of these are absolutely worth your time. Subscribe if you haven't already, please do. Lots of lists on the way. Have a good day and goodbye.